Good morning. Welcome to Truth for Today. This is Dai-Qing Yuan, your host and teacher, pastor of Abilene Bible Church. Today we're continuing our study of the second return. The text is Ezra 7 through 10. And today is lesson 2, Ezra's journey. The text is Ezra 8. And why are we studying this? Because we have studied the books of eschatology. Daniel, the 5 pillars of Matthew, and Revelation. And the 5 pillars are the bridge between Daniel and the Revelation. And once this is done as the foundational books, we gave a first century application, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. It's about how the disciples thought for a period of time, for about 40 years, that Jesus was coming back in one generation. Then we found out he did not. Then they changed their theology, eschatology, to be a more long-term one. And then in order to teach one important eschatological book, that is Zechariah, we have to teach it in the only correct way, the chronological study, in the context of post-exilic books. So we teach these 6 books, 3 prophecy, 3 history, and we teach them in the chronological order in the way of 6 mini-series. The first return, the high expectations, the reversal of fortune, and now the second return, which is the second half of Ezra. And about Ezra, the first 6 chapters are about the first return under the leadership of Zerubbabel. And chapters 7 through 10 is the second return under Ezra. So it can be separated into these titles: Ezra's mission, which we have done in Ezra 7. Now we're doing Ezra's journey, which is Ezra 8. Okay, now about the hope of Israel. Ezra 8:1. Now, these are the heads of their fathers' households, and the genealogical enrollment of those who went up with me from Babylon in the reign of King Artaxerxes. Of the sons of Phinehas, Gershom. Of the sons of Ithamar, Daniel. Of the sons of David, Hattush. Okay. In Ezra's list of the returnees, 3 were prominent, 2 representing the 2 houses of high priesthood: Gershom, who was a descendant of Phinehas, ben Eleazar, ben Aaron, and Daniel, a descendant of Ithamar, ben Aaron. And then 1 representing the house, one house of kingship. That's Hattush, a descendant of King David. Okay. Now, the first high priest was Aaron. He had 4 sons: Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The first 2 sons, Nadab and Abihu, died for using strange fire in worship, according to Leviticus 10:1. Eleazar became the next high priest. That's the 3rd son. His son Phinehas was zealous for the Lord in the war between Israel and the Moabites, Midianites. And he was promised perpetual high priesthood, according to Numbers 25, 7 through 13. The background story is this, that the king of Moab, named Balak, he hired a Gentiles prophet called Balaam from the great rivers, from Euphrates area. And Balaam, who actually connects to the spiritual world, but usually to demons, God cut into his line, in a sense, and told him that he cannot curse Israel as he was paid to. He has to bless Israel. And then he obliged. So afterwards, when King Balak wanted to withdraw his gifts, Balaam, who loves money, gave an advice to Balak, saying that Israel's God is greater than their God. So they cannot corrupt the spirituality of the Israelites unless they corrupt the morality of the Israelites first. So he told basically the Moabites and the Midianites to send their women to basically sleep with the Israelite men first, and then lure them to worship their idol, which is Moloch, which means king, and it's the same as Baal, which means Lord, and basically other names for Satan. And God was angry with Israel, so God sent a plague, and it killed tens of thousands of Israelites, until one man who was zealous for the Lord, that was Eleazar. No, that was Phinehas, the son of Eleazar. He speared through a man and a woman who were copulating. He just speared through them, and that made the plague stop. And because of that, God has awarded Phinehas with a perpetual high priesthood. Now, after the illegal dynasty of Gideon and Abimelech, about the time of high priest Uzi, God gave the high priesthood to Eli from the house of Ithamar. Okay, so even though the promise was to the descendants of Phinehas with a perpetual high priesthood, however, when they were not faithful, God allowed the high priesthood to be shifted to another house, the house of Eli, not the house of Eleazar / Phinehas. Okay, and Eli was from the house of Ithamar, and the reason for this is probably because of the action of Gideon. Gideon was a common man made into a great man by God, and at that time, Israelites were having a national problem. It's not a regional problem anymore. The whole country would be invaded by the foreigners once they see people are throwing the grain up. They will come and confiscate them. So the whole Israelite nation was in starvation, and that's why when Gideon, whom God chose, and he showed faith, he tested God twice actually. The other way is asking about the fleece, but after he was sure that God is genuine and is with him, he had the faith. He reduced all the people from 100,000 to 300 in order to use faith and let God fight for Israel, and then he defeated the enemies. The Israelites were very grateful, so that's why they offered him kingship. They said, may you and your son rule over us. Well, isn't that kingship? However, his answer was very spiritual if he only said the first sentence only. He said, only Jehovah rules over us. Yeah. However, he added a sentence. Now, if you're thankful to me, just give me all the gold that we have confiscated. So since they have just defeated the Ishmaelites, who were traders, and even their camels had big chains of gold, so they piled up all of the confiscated gold in the war and as a gift for Gideon, and it piled into a hill. So he became a super rich man, and he married many women, and he had 70 sons. You got to have quite a few wives to have 70 sons, and one. So, in a sense, he became the uncrowned, the king, and he also made a golden ephod for himself in his hometown. And that made him both the civil leader, the judge, and the religious leader, the high priest. So in a sense, he usurped the high priesthood. And that was a sin. And that's a religious sin. And it adds on to it, since he's from the north. He's from Manasseh. And that adds on the north's sin in religious unfaithfulness, because they already had a Danite idol from the beginning of the Judges period, and later when Israel was split into two kingdoms, Israel and Judah. And the first king of Israel, not Rehoboam, but Jeroboam, he made two golden calves, one put in the northern city of Dan, one put in the southern city, southern for Israel, of Bethel. And then that added on. So the north, it majors in the sin of religious unfaithfulness in the vertical dimension. Okay, and Gideon was the one who added onto it in the middle, between the Danites and the kingdom split. So from his time, God started to count the sin of Israel and of Judah. He also did another sin of agreeing with the Israelites to change the Jubilee to be not the 50th year, for that will require 2 consecutive fallow years, but change it to the second half of the 49th year. He agreed with that, made it the choice for the easy option. However, he did not enforce it. Being the first uncrowned king, from his time, God started to count the sin of Judah also in the social injustice, which means they did not obey enforce the sabbatical years when debts are forgiven, nor the Jubilee years when land was returned. So when they missed 70 in 490 years, and that's why the South was sentenced to have 70 years of exile to force a Sabbath for the land. But anyway, Gideon was a common man made into a great man, but great man's little mistakes are great in consequence. So he has a religious sin and he has a social sin. Okay, religious sin making the golden ephod, making God to start to count the sins of Israel. Okay, God gave Israel 390 years and it fell, and Israel was taken to Assyria. Okay, and then Judah, because he did the social sin of not enforcing the sabbatical years, and then God started to count from his time the sins of Judah, and after 490 years, Judah fell, and then 70 years of Babylonian captivity. Okay, so anyway, Gideon is a complex person. Okay, something great, something bad, and then because he was uncrowned king and he had 70 sons, one of his 70 sons named Abimelech, which means my father is king, by his father Gideon. So when you call your son, my father is king, what do you consider yourself? King, right? So Abimelech changed the uncrowned king to a crowned king, but illegal king. Okay, so he ruled for 3 years, and afterwards Israel was invaded by the Philistines, who occupied the south, and therefore the civil judges for the later period of judges were only in the north, and the southern judges are religious judges only, okay, because the civil matter was ruled by the Philistines. Okay, and then they have one high priest, as Eli, one the Nazarite, a strong man, Samson, and the one prophet, Samuel. Okay, they're all from the south. Okay, and then came the kingdom, Saul and David and Solomon. Okay, so anyway, the rule of Gideon as the judge and Abimelech as the king together is called the illegal dynasty, because at that time the high priest Uzi basically surrendered his authority and allowed Gideon to do what he did, and then God gave the high priesthood to Eli from the house of Ithamar, and Then the house of Eli from Ithamar were the high priests from then on, from Eli until the time of David, and ended with Abiathar ben Ahimelech, okay, according to 1 Samuel 22:20 and 37. And Abiathar supported the wrong son of Solomon to become king, and that's why Solomon removed Abiathar and then kept only one high priest. That's called the Zadok. Okay. King David had two high priests, for he also made Zadok, a descendant of Phinehas, a high priest. When David ordained the 24 orders of priests, 16, that's 2/3 of them, are from the house of Eleazar, and 8, that's 1/3, are from the house of Ithamar, according to 1 Chronicles 24, 2, 3 through 5. And Abiathar was forced to retire by Solomon because he supported a rival, Adonijah. Okay, yeah, wrong son of David. Okay, he supported Adonijah, not Solomon. That's why he was removed. 1 Kings 1:53. The high priesthood since then on belonged to the house of Zadok. Okay, and all the way until the last legitimate one was defrocked by the little Antichrist, Antiochus IV Epiphanes, during the intertestamental times, okay, in the year 175 BC. Okay. Now, by listing the three prominent persons, two for the two houses of high priesthood and one for the one house of legitimate kingship, Ezra expressed the desire of his mission. By worshiping God properly through legitimate high priests, God would restore the Davidic kingship, sending the Messiah as the ultimate son of David, or the new David. In the following list of the 12 houses of laity Jews, Ezra expressed that the Jewish returnees from the 4 tribes, because the south only represent 4 tribes, Judah, Simeon, which are the 2 tribes of the south. Benjamin is one of the 2 tribes of the center. Okay, it's Dan and Benjamin. Benjamin, because it had a civil war, in a sense, a civil war with all Israel in the beginning of the Judges period. Its population dwindled to only 600 men, and then therefore most of its land were occupied by Judah, who encroached in, and including the city of Jerusalem. So Benjamin, even though it's one of the tribes of the north, later it's considered joining the south. And Levi was restored to replace Dan. And then, because its land was so close to the Philistines, it's hard to stay there. So most of them moved north to the city of Dan. And they had an idol, and they basically disassociated with the Israelite tribes, and I think they probably joined the Phoenicians, who are idol worshiping. So anyway, Dan was considered lost, so Levi was restored. And during the split kingdom period, the divided kingdom period, the north appointed non-Levites to be the priests. So the Levites in the north all went south. Okay, that's why when the kingdom south, kingdom of Judah in the south, southern kingdom, okay, of Judah, when it went into exile and returned, it represents 4 tribes: Judah, Simeon, Benjamin, and Levi. However, Ezra took 12 houses from these 4 tribes, okay, and let them represent all Israel of the 12 tribes, making possible for God to restore the glory of Israel. Of course, he didn't consider the Samaritans as legitimate as representing Israel, although they are bloodline descendants of the northern 8 tribes who went to the Bible only recorded that they were taken to Assyria, but the Samaritan had a Samaritan Chronicle, and they recorded that after 70 years they returned, and after 131 years they were taken again, this time during the Persian Empire, And then after 60 years, they return again. And from then on, they are the Samaritans. They actually tried to join the Jews in building the temple in Jerusalem, but they were rejected because the Jews thought Samaritans were impure in bloodline or in theology. And later, the Samaritans built a temple of their own on Mount Gerizim, and during the intertestamental Jewish kingdom of the Hasmoneans, Maccabean Hasmoneans, they destroyed that temple. And that's why at the time of Jesus, when he met the woman at the well, and the woman asked, where is the right way to worship? Should we worship on Mount Gerizim, or should we worship in Jerusalem? Well, Mount Gerizim was actually the place of the tabernacle of God during the early part of the Judges period. It was Eli who moved it to where did it move to Shiloh. Okay, it was in Mount Gerizim, which is in Shechem. Okay, there are two mountains around Shechem. Shechem's in the valley, and there are two hills. Mount Gerizim is where 6 tribes went on to pronounce blessings. Mount Ebal is where 6 tribes went on to say curses at the time of the conquest led by Joshua. So anyway, the Jews were very proud because they know that God gave a promise of restoration to Judah, not to Israel. Israel has a crime and a punishment, and that's it. But for the Judah, there's a crime, 490 years. There's a punishment, 70 years, and there's a restoration, the 77, which is 490 years of. For Judah only. Therefore, the king of Israel comes from David, and he will be the king of Judah and king of all Israel, and he will be the great king of the world. So that promise given to Judah, and that's why the Jews, I think, they despised the Samaritans, thinking that they're unequal, and indeed they are not. However, the Samaritans did not join the Jews in the first century after the rejection of Jesus. The Jews rose up twice against Rome, trying to take their own fate into their hands. Once around AD 70, once around AD 135. So 66 to 73, that's called the First Jewish Revolt. 132 to 135, the Second Jewish Revolt. And after that, the Jews were driven out of the land. But the Samaritans were allowed to stay. And the Samaritans later, through many conquests and mixtures, but they are the Palestinians of today. Okay, so if you want, when Jesus comes back during the rapture of the church, after that there's a 7-year tribulation, and when he anoints 144,000, the 8 tribes representing the north will be from the Palestinians because they are Hebrew bloodline. 70% of them of their bloodline are Hebrew. And then the Jews, who have some are converts, but some are bloodline. From the bloodline Jews, will have people in the 144,000 that represent the 4 tribes of the south. And those people will be the last called servants of God during the tribulation. That's why they're called the little ones. Okay, and they will tell the gospel to the world. Okay, so you can see the mindset of Ezra, why he chose these 3 people representing the hope of Israel. 2 representing the high priest, 1 representing the kingship. By worshiping God properly through the proper high priest, proper Levites, and so on, God would grant the restoration of all Israel, represented by the 12 houses of Judah. That was his mindset. He never wanted to include the Samaritans, nor would the Jews include the Palestinians these days. But I think Jesus will. Okay, so that is basically the beginning of the of this session, which we call it the journey. Okay, because he's preparing the people. Okay, and now he will get into the representing all Israel, the 12 houses. Okay, of the son of Shechaniah, who was the son of Parosh, Zechariah, and with him 150 males who were in the genealogical list. And that's one house. And the same way he was talking about 12 houses. And this is what he ended up having. Okay, the list of returnees with Ezra, a name of a person. Okay, the first three are the hope of Israel, and then the 12 houses representing all Israel. Each have a person who has a father's name, so Zechariah ben Shechaniah, and he's of the house of Parosh. Okay, so we have the person, the father, and the house, and then that represents 1/12 of all Israel. Okay, and the specific numbers of people are given for each group, and you add up the representative, you get the total person, and that's it. May God bless His word. Amen. We see wars, and earthquakes, and then even some more weird things. But just remember, God is in control, and no matter what happens, He is our King, and we are His subjects, and more than that, believers are His family members, His children, and even sons. And the church is the bride of Christ, whom Christ will come to take away before the real tribulation. And then while the world is experiencing the wrath of God, the bride of Christ, which is elected before the foundation of the world, redeemed by Christ through the Holy Spirit, and sanctified by the Word, and we will receive rewards for the works we do during these 7 years in the sky. And at the end of the 7-year tribulation, we will come back with Christ. Christ as the king, the church, like the queen, will rule together over the world. Those who, during the tribulation time, who believed in Jesus, and the Palestinians and the Jews, representing the Israelites and the Judeans, will unite again, and they will live into the millennium, and the 144,000 from them will tell the gospel to the rest of the world. They will multiply in physical bodies, while we will be monitors from God, helping them. That's our picture, and may God bless your future. Amen.